After our failure in the Russian Civil War, a lot of us socialists fled to neighboring countries, one of those being the almighty Don Host, a small authoritarian country led by Cossacks. But their rule is being questioned, the lack of a modern industry and a rift between pro-German and pro-Russian Cossacks is destabilizing the nation. And with a German economic crisis quickly turning global, the eastern parts of our nation have declared independence. The Cossack in power declared them traitors going to war despite our fragile economy. Luckily, the irregular cavalry quickly stabilized the situation by capturing the revolt's capital in Astrakhan. But in our own capital, the debates if we should join Russia or Germany came to a head. The pro-Russian Cossacks tried a complete coup d'etat. After a few hours of fighting, they had managed to kill Krasnov, the current head of state. This is our chance. With no leader and complete chaos, we will take up arms and let the new socialist nation rise. As we took up arms, the workers and peasants joined our side and we could storm the capital. Many things need to be done now that we are in power, but the most important is that we shall avenge the loss of the Bolsheviks in the Russian Civil War. We are the new Russia, a rightful successor to the one lost in the chaos of the Civil War. But first we have to fix our own small nation. The Cossacks are a threat to our revolution, but complete de-Cossacization would be too costly. So instead we will seek help from the few Red Cossacks who have helped the Reds before. We must now begin to fix our economy. We will create the Gosplan, a planning committee precisely dictating how our economy shall operate. While the Cossacks were corrupt and did nothing to improve our industrialization, we shall invest greatly into both the civilian and the military sectors. Still, our country is mostly agricultural, so we shall use the profits of industrialization to mechanize it and greatly increase its effectiveness. For now, it seems our planned economy has succeeded and the fragility after Black Monday is gone, so we can turn towards a very important question, the question of private property. While complete nationalization would be preferable, we will instead allow corporations if they pay a special tax to us. And this tax won't be a small one. But we will still nationalize a few companies, like the Belgian Neve Steel Company. While we enacted all these reforms, we slowly got rid of the Cossacks' power, so we can now create the Council of People's Cossacks, our new parliament. But we must be wary of factionalism. If our nation divides, the 2nd October Revolution will never materialize. A single party state is the only way to keep this from happening. Since our rise, the party has been ruled by Semyon Budoyon, a military general. Luckily, he agreed to step down and give away the power to a real communist. We can now actually begin to build a new and modern society. And while our new leaders work with that, Budyonny and the military shall begin to plan for the 2nd October Revolution. Right now we are way too small to scare the terrorist national populist in power in Russia. We need help from neighboring socialists. While the only nation with socialists in power is Ukraine in the west, there are strong socialist sentiments in our south. The Cuban People's Republic has a powerful cooperative and trade union movement. After supporting them and encouraging them to protest, they managed to overthrow the corrupt Cuban government. With loyal leaders in place, they agreed to unify with us. This doubled our military strength and greatly improved our industry. So now we shall continue to the Mountain Republic currently in a civil war. But before we could, something horrible happened. The Russians in our countryside and cities have rebelled in the goal of joining the Russian populists. After a week of suppression, we got everything under control, but the Russian government has seized the opportunity to attack us. The 2nd October Revolution has arrived earlier than we wanted, but don't worry. With the Cossacks and the Cuban military we shall prevail and carry out our plans of revolution. The Russians weren't really planning a war either, which meant that they didn't have many divisions on our border. Most of their elite forces were preparing to destroy the Islamic Federation of Turkestan. This meant we had a chance to do something about the supply problem in the center of our Russian border. After threatening to encircle Volgograd, the local commander made the rather stupid decision to retreat from the city and allow our troops to enter it and capture the supply hub. We shall now hold the defensive line until we're strong enough not to risk total annihilation. For this we have begun training 20 garrison divisions. But we will also rise the resistance. The workers and farmers will join our army to liberate their brothers in Russia. After only a few weeks of spreading the word, we have assembled a whopping 22 divisions of them. But any more on the front will risk massive supply problems. Instead, we will send them south to the Mountain Republic. Our plan to turn them socialists peacefully sadly failed as their government managed to hold on to power. So intervention it is. Ever since the defeat of the Dagestan rebellion, their armed forces have prepared for this conflict, and the mountainous region will help them to defend. But while they have heavily fortified Cherkessk and Pyattogorsk, we found a weak spot between the two cities. We used it to advance south towards Georgia and encircle Cherkessk and 2 of their divisions. After we crushed them, the rest of their army tried to counterattack us. At first we held them back, but soon we got reports from the Russian front. The Russians who had dealt with the Islamic Federation have begun to attack us and violently. With human wave-like attacks, they tried to take back Volgograd and advance in the west. The Volgograd attack was diverted since we had prepared forts in the area, but in the west they were close to break through several times. So we decided to retreat from one of our forward positions in Volgograd and send over the units to the west. With these reinforcements we managed to hold them off. Back in the Mountain Republic, we had managed to encircle Pyattogorsk too. This is a really important city since it's a supply hub, which means we can stage attacks further into their territory. And that's what we did. Since we already had destroyed parts of their army, they didn't really have any defense in depth. So once we got through their first line, we could continue as far as we wanted. Soon we arrived to the Caspian Sea and divided their army in several parts. We even managed to go around their defenses and capture their capital, though we sadly lost it a few days later. So first we focused on clearing out Dagestan and Terek. Then with our whole southern force we recaptured their capital and they surrendered. We will now begin the process to integrate and learn them the ways of socialism. After our victory against the Russian offensive, they haven't tried another. Maybe it's time for us to try. On half our front, the Russian divisions have no supply and take almost 10% attrition. This is the perfect area to stage a few raids and then retreat back to our own territory which has supply. It took a bit longer than we anticipated to get them to retreat, but we still managed to encircle 3 divisions. After capturing them, we retreated back again. While the conquest of Volgograd has supplied our army in the center, we are still lacking supply in the west. So hopefully, while the Russians are focusing their defensive efforts in the east, we will strike and march over the Don. After almost a month of horrible fighting conditions, we crossed it and captured the supply hub, but we lost many great men in the process. For a long time now, Budyonny has improved our army. He has invested into new military factories to produce trucks, allowing us to reach greater distances without a supply hub. He has also plans to equip part of our army with artillery, but those will take more time. Still, he has managed to create a new socialist army, no longer reliant on the Cossacks. We will now continue in the unsupplied east. Finally, ever since the war began and the Ukrainians managed to break away from Germany, we have tried to get them on our side. The People's Kingdom of Ukraine, a monarcho-socialist state, has agreed to join our war against Russia. And they will recognize our government and the 2nd October Revolution if we surrender our claims on this territory. With them in the war, things are going to go quick. We will start our socialist propaganda in Russia to lower their morale and surrender limit so that this war gets over quicker. We immediately sent our strongest Cossack divisions to assist in a thrust to Moscow. While the Russians were fairly quick to respond to the Ukrainian declaration of war, we still managed to encircle 2 divisions. With the Ukrainians noticing we sent them support, we decided to form a temporary faction with them. So together we captured Kursk, the first big city to fall in a while. From Kursk we continued north, closer and closer towards Moscow. We entered Bryansk and Orel. But from there we didn't continue towards Moscow, instead we turned west to encircle a few of their divisions. Sadly, the Russians understood our offensive and staged a counterattack against Orel, threatening to encircle us instead. So we had to retreat back a bit and defend the city. After successfully repelling their attack, we continued our encirclement but smaller and managed to destroy 5 of their divisions. But the Russians have also been doing progress. They have captured Starodub and Hommel. We need a big encirclement to redeem this. We began from Kursk. With Ukrainian troops supporting our flanks, we broke through the Russian divisions and could advance east at a rapid pace. Russian reinforcements arrived, but after a difficult battle we united with our troops in our home, encircling a record number of Russians. As the Russians tried to free themselves, they only disunited their forces, making it easier for us to destroy them. Finally, we can confirm that the Russian army has less than 1 million men. This is it, a few more encirclements and the terrorists in Petrograd will be defeated. We've captured the biggest city of the Russian state. There isn't much time left for them. Our socialist propaganda has done magnificent work at reducing their surrender limit. Our spies have managed to spread it and sow discontent among their population and even army. If we continue like this, they might surrender immediately after we capture Petrograd. So we decided to continue. Our Cossacks didn't stop to anything. As Russian troops arrived, we simply encircled them and continued. We tried to destroy most of them, but couldn't always. This created several irritating pockets of Russian resistance. While half of our Cossacks pushed north, our other half marched west to the Baltics. Once they arrived, we had encircled more than 10 divisions above Ukraine. Back to Petrograd, they had anticipated our attack and assembled a defensive force stronger than ours. So while we did reach the outskirts of the city, we never had the chance to enter it. We had to wait for the encirclements to be dealt with and reinforcements to arrive until we could renew our attack on the city. As they arrived, we started our attack in the south to close our encirclement of Petrograd. Then the battles from house to house began, but since they were encircled and couldn't receive any reinforcements, it wasn't that difficult. Soon we had planted our flags on their old government buildings, but we didn't find any of their leaders. They had all fled to Yekaterinburg. Fortunately, we won't have to walk all the way over the Ural Mountains. Their population is exhausted. If we capture a few more big cities, they will surrender, and it won't be that difficult to capture them. The Russian army is running out of troops. So we began capturing city after city after city. Two of the cities we captured led to an encirclement, further weakening their army. Then we captured several more completely open cities. Soon we had reached all the way to Kazan and Nizhny Novgorod, creating a huge pocket. The Russian army had now completely given up. We only had to capture a few cities in the pocket, and their leaders in Yekaterinburg followed them. We stand victorious, with our flag flying from Petrograd to Irkutsk. The revolution is renewed. We shall immediately change name and flag and move our capital to Moscow. But still there is a strong opposition to our regime in the army, among citizens and politicians. And the Russian economy is in shambles. We need to fix that too. But first of all, we will ease up our conscription laws and demobilize our economy. Now we can begin. To fix the current state of the economy, we will immediately implement our socialist ideas that have worked for us in the Don. We will move the Gosplan to Moscow and massively expand its plans to all of Russia. This includes industrialization and electrification of rural areas. The part about industrialization includes developing civilian and military industry, but also to mechanize our agriculture in states with a rich soil. But you can't produce toasters and guns without resources. Thankfully, Russia is a vast land with many hidden treasures. After we have located and dug up the natural resources, we might even be able to sell some on the global markets. Eventually, the economy began showing signs of stabilization and growth. With the economy cemented and healed, our civilians will begin to turn away from their national populist ideas towards socialism. But the opposition is still flourishing. Not the terrorists and supporters of the old Russian state. We have them on the chase. But the trade unions and other socialist parties not from the Don. Something has to be done about this immediately. We will begin with deciding the fate of all other socialist parties. We can't afford any disunity. We have to remain a one-party state, so banning and arresting their leaders is our only choice. Next up, we will deal with the trade unions, but there isn't much we can do. We will allow them to exist independently, and then they will probably calm down and just do their job at improving conditions for the workers. With the opposition parties gone and trade unions on our side, we can finally drive through the biggest reform of our politics yet. Just like all democratic nations, we will create a separation of powers between the unions, the Soviets and our party. This will allow for protection against reactionaries, but also greatly effectivize our government. Now we can finally say the political crisis is over. Our regime is cemented into Russia. We are here to stay. There is only one thing left to fix, our military. While we did win against the populists, we are nothing compared to the Germans or the Japanese armies. But this I will save for the next video. With so many enemies left to deal with, this video would become too long. In the west, the German army is steamrolling our syndicalist friends, and in our south, the Ottoman Empire is rising from its sickness. Additionally, we haven't even united all of Russia, so subscribe and hit the bell to not miss the next video. It would be a disaster just like the German occupying Paris if you miss it.